A couple of weeks ago, my dog Coda came into my room and started trying to jump on my bed, which she was successful of doing after a couple of tries, and I gave her a little nudge to, get off my bed. She jumped down and left. Then I heard my phone downstairs, so I walked down and get a call from my grandma who said she made some food. So I said, okay, I will stop by and come eat. I get my jacket on and get ready to leave. I get my keys and grab my dog's leash to take her. We got in the car and drove for about 10 minutes, then arrived. I was eating and talking to my grandma and things, but when I was getting ready to leave, I couldn't find Coda. I searched everywhere, in the backyard, in the front outside, nowhere to be found. After a good hour of searching my grandma's neighborhood, it started to get dark. It was about 9:30ish, so I decided to come back and check the next day. I left and went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up because I heard something downstairs. To my surprise, it was my dog, and at this point, I thought, wait, what? Later, I came back to my grandma's to tell her I found my dog. As soon as I arrived, I told her. After I told her about how Coda was home, I thought to myself, did I even bring her? I asked my grandma, and she said yes, I did, because I left the leash in her living room. I then asked my grandma to watch her footage on her cameras from last night, and there was no footage of Coda in the street or leaving the front door. But there was footage of her entering the house with me. I went home later, Coda was still there, and to this day I still don't know what happened. This is the craziest UFO phenomena true story, and it came from my dad. 1960s in Ethiopia, my dad is just a child, 9 years old, at the time playing with his best friend Gabriel after school. They were playing in the fenced backyard of my dad's house. My dad turns his back for a second, then turns to look back at his friend, and Gabriel's gone. It's important to note that my dad and Gabriel were from the top 1% of Ethiopia's ruling elite. My dad's father was Minister of Interior of Ethiopia, and Gabriel's father was a 4-star general of Ethiopia. The backyard Gabriel disappeared from had a 10-foot brick wall with armed guards patrolling on the outside. A couple of hours pass. His parents, my dad's parents, and guards are searching, but no Gabriel. 48 hours pass. Now there is a nationwide search for this important general's kid. It's on the news. Police are searching door to door, describing him and what he was wearing when he disappeared. He was wearing his private school uniform, white shirt, brown pants. Helicopters even searched the countryside looking for him. Still nothing. A month passes, then 2, then 4. People start losing hope that he would never be found and think the worst. Exactly 6 months to the day he disappeared, Gabriel appears back in my dad's backyard. He was wearing the same white private school uniform and it was still clean. He looked exactly the same as when he disappeared. This is where it starts to get weird. Once they confirmed he was okay, they started asking where he had been. He said a couple of nice men took him on a trip. He was in a white room that glowed and other children were there from different countries. He said he was surprised that the nice men who looked like white guys could speak Ethiopian, and he could understand what the other children were saying even though they were not Ethiopian. The white glowing room had no windows, and the doors disappeared into the walls. There were buttons on the walls, and if a kid pushed them, then a bed would come out of the wall. He said he was then all of a sudden in a city that was glowing, clean, and cars were flying around him. He said there was people there, but they looked strange. Like us, but different. One nice man was still with him and took him to a tall building, where he said he had to stay there for a while, but showed him a room that he could use for entertainment. Gabriel said he could push a button and the room itself goes places. An open field, the beach, the room itself even flies. He said after a couple of hours he was taken back to Ethiopia and appeared in the backyard. He thought he was only gone a couple of hours total. No one believed him. And Ethiopia being a super religious country, most adults around him thought he got possessed by the devil. Gabriel was even forced to see a priest to get the evil spirits out of him. My dad still kept in contact with him throughout their lives. Gabriel got a doctorate in physics, and I believe works in Holland still. My family moved to this standard, upscale suburban home after roughing it for a couple of years to save up. We also got a deal on the home because it was a model home before it was ours, like had all the fake furniture to show off the neighborhood homes. Anyways, it had this loft area with 2 stairwells that go up to it, one in the front and one in the back. You could pretty much hear everything from this loft since it was so open. One day, my 2 best friends, guy and a girl, are hanging out in the loft. We were in high school and they were horny and always all over each other, whether I was in the room or not. We were watching TV and I get up to take a piss. When I left, they were all up on each other. When I came back, they were on different ends of the couch. I had just thought they'd gotten into a fight, so I asked what was up. "Your little sister is home," the dude says. My face turned sheet white. "What's wrong?" the girl asked. I asked them what made them think that. They said they heard her. I'm sort of freaking out at this point. "No one's here," I say. We check the house, and I'm right. Well, it turns out that before it was a model home, a family lived there, and a little girl had been playing in the loft, but had climbed on the railing and fell to her death below. My two best friends swear, to this day, that they had heard what they thought was my sister laugh and run up the stairs, hitting her hands on each step like she was running up on all fours. I never had any encounters, other than the fact that right next to where she landed was the house's central intercom. We had an intercom system in every room that you could play music through or talk to each other. Every so often at night at the same time, you'd wake up to the intercom button being pressed, and just the blank sound of static airways like someone was holding down the button, but no one was speaking. My room was on the 3rd floor, and I'd have to walk down to the bottom of the main unit and turn it off there. I always thought I'd see her. Driving in rural areas in New England, near the borders of Vermont and Massachusetts. So I'm not sure which one I was in. It was late. Well, okay, so late it was actually early. And there was fog. Dense fog. Like Silent Hill levels of fog. And like an idiot who dies in the opening scene of a horror movie, I am driving on back roads. First my headlights just up and goes out. Cannot use high beams because of fog. I'm in the middle of nowhere. I haven't seen a house or a town in a long time. Car starts making noise. Check engine light comes on, so I pull over. Nothing much around. Field and fog and dark. Creepy as hell. I gamely look at the engine. I can fix electronics, not engines. I tighten all the things I know. Car now won't start. So I'm in the dark, in the middle of nowhere, on the side of the road. Because of the natural rules of how things work, my cell phone has no service as well. It's like one big cliche. But I'm not stupid enough to go wandering the roads right now. So I recline my seat and decide to take a nap for a couple hours until the sun comes up. I wake up. The sun is coming up, the fog is going away. And I'm on the main street of a tiny town, parked in front of what looks like the Bates Motel house. Houses everywhere. It was the creepiest feeling. I was sure I was off in the woods. There was not a light on in any house all night. There was a service station 50 yards up the road. I walked up to it, talked to the guy, who looked perfectly normal. He walked over to look at the car, asked me to try to start it, and it did. The thing turned over right away, and both headlights were working. I drove on, never got the name of the little village, and I couldn't find it on a map. I always felt like I was in this big setup for a horror movie that just didn't pan out. While at uni, my friends and I ran out of booze. Hardly any shops were open because it was late on, so the only option was to walk the mile or so to the nearest 24-hour supermarket. Between the supermarket and the dorms we lived in was just row after row of suburban houses, which all look the same. As we were walking down one road, we passed a field with a large campfire and some people riding horses around it. There were people playing musical instruments and general sounds of a good time going on. The horses and fire, and the lanterns which were dotted about, gave it a very old-fashioned feel. Maybe 5 minutes after passing the field, now walking past houses again, one of my friends commented on how weird and out of place that gathering of people had been. My other friend and I had been thinking exactly the same thing, so, curious, we turn around and walk back to find out exactly what was going on. There was nothing there. Not just no people or horses, there was no field. Just more and more houses. Even though we were absolutely certain we were on the right road, as we simply turned around, we walked up and down the neighboring roads too. We found nothing, though we'd had some drinks, and so I've got absolutely no idea what happened that night. When I was a kid, I had this really creepy clown that was sat on a little wooden swing that hung from my fireplace in my bedroom. Now, I'm not afraid of clowns, but that thing made me feel like I was being watched, but my parents wouldn't let me get rid of it, because my grandmother gave it to me. One day, I had had enough of the damn thing. I was probably about 10 because it wasn't long before we moved out of that house. I decided that I didn't want it watching me playing, so I turned it around to face the wall. It was hanging close enough to the wall that it wouldn't just spin back around. I sat back down to continue playing with my brats, and after a few minutes, I got that prickly feeling like I was being watched again. I looked over my shoulder, and that clown's head was on backwards. I noped the fuck out and ran downstairs screaming and crying and begged my mother to come up and look. She did, but when we got back to my room, the whole clown was facing forwards again. My mom told me to stop being stupid and making a fuss, so the doll conveniently fell out of my window and smashed its porcelain face on the slabs. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button and the subscribe button for more content in the future.